Grace Kim stood in her father's office. With her hands shaking, she read the document 3 times, hoping the words would change. They did not change. "You want me to marry a soldier," she said. Her voice was calm, but her heart was burning. A common soldier with no name, no rank, and no future. Her father, Ambassador William Kim, sat behind his desk with tired eyes. He was 60 years old and looked even older. The weight of Earth's survival rested on his shoulders. "Every day, his name is Daniel Park," her father said. "And this marriage will unite the Eastern and Western colonies. You know how close we came to civil war last year. This union will show our people that we are one." Grace threw the document on his desk. "I graduated first in my class at the Diplomatic Academy. I speak 9 languages. I was supposed to become an ambassador, not a soldier's wife. You will still serve Earth," her father said. "Just in a different way." Grace wanted to scream. She wanted to break something. But she was a diplomat's daughter, and diplomats did not scream. They smiled and nodded and died slowly inside. "When?" she asked. "Next month on Harmony's Ed Station." Grace walked out without another word. The year was 2847. Humanity had joined the Galactic Alliance 200 years ago, but they were still treated like children at the adult table. Other species lived for thousands of years. They had technology that humans could not understand. They looked at humans the way humans looked at insects, small, weak, forgettable. Grace had spent her whole life trying to prove them wrong. She had studied their languages, their cultures, their politics. She had made herself useful, valuable, necessary, and now her father was throwing all of that away for a political marriage to a nobody. She spent the next month learning everything she could about Daniel Park. There was almost nothing to learn. He was 32 years old. He had served in the military for 10 years. He had no family, no medals, no accomplishments worth mentioning. He worked in maintenance and engineering. He had never been promoted past the basic rank. He was in every way completely ordinary. On the day of her wedding, Grace wore a simple white dress. She refused to wear anything beautiful. This was not a celebration. This was a funeral for her dreams. The ceremony took place in a small hall on Harmony's Edge Station. About 50 people attended, mostly military officials and diplomatic staff. Grace's mother had died years ago. She had no siblings. She stood alone at the altar and waited for her future husband. Daniel Park walked in, and Grace felt her heart sink even further. He was not ugly. He was not handsome either. He was simply plain. Average height, average build, average face, brown hair cut short, brown eyes that looked at the floor more than they looked at people. He wore a clean but cheap suit that did not fit him well. He walked to the altar and stood beside her. He did not smile. He did not speak. He simply waited. The official read the vows. Grace said the words she was supposed to say. Daniel said his words in a quiet voice that she could barely hear. When it was time to kiss, he gave her a small, awkward peck on the cheek. That was it. She was married. The reception lasted 2 hours. Grace smiled and shook hands and accepted congratulations from people who did not mean them. Daniel stood in the corner, alone, holding a glass of water he never drank. Grace watched him and felt only anger. He did not try to talk to her. He did not try to meet the guests. He did not try to be anything more than invisible. When the reception ended, They went to their assigned quarters. It was a small apartment with one bedroom, one bathroom, and a tiny living area. Grace stood in the middle of the room and crossed her arms. "I want to make something clear," she said. "This marriage is political, nothing more. I do not know you, I do not love you. I will do my duty for Earth, but I will not pretend to be your wife in private." Daniel nodded. "I understand. Good." Grace pointed at the bedroom. "I will sleep in there. You can sleep on the couch." "Of course," Daniel said. He did not argue. He did not complain. He simply sat down on the small couch and folded his hands in his lap. Grace went into the bedroom and closed the door. She lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about all the things she had wanted from life. Career, respect, maybe someday a husband she actually loved. Now she had none of those things. She heard no sound from the living room. Daniel was completely silent, as if he did not exist at all. Sleep did not come easily. Grace tossed and turned for hours. Finally, around 3:00 in the morning, she got up to get water. She walked through the dark living room and noticed that the couch was empty. She found Daniel on the observation deck below their quarters. He stood alone in front of the large window, looking out at the stars. His back was to her. He did not know she was watching. Grace was about to turn away when something strange happened. Light appeared around Daniel. It was soft at first, like a golden glow coming from inside his body. It grew brighter for just a moment, surrounding him like a halo. In that light, Daniel looked different. He looked taller, stronger, ancient. Then the light disappeared. Daniel was just a plain man again, standing alone in the dark. Grace blinked. She rubbed her eyes. She told herself she was tired, that she had imagined it, but deep in her heart she knew she had not imagined anything. She went back to her room and did not sleep until morning, when she finally closed her eyes. She dreamed of fire and wings and a voice older than the stars. She woke up with one thought in her mind: who did I marry? But when she saw Daniel in the morning making coffee, the tiny kitchen, he was just a quiet, plain, forgettable man again. He handed her a cup without a word and went back to the couch. Grace drank her coffee and watched him. The mystery would have to wait. She had work to do and a life to rebuild. Whatever Daniel Park was hiding, she did not have time to care, or so she told herself. 3 months passed on the diplomatic vessel Everlight. Grace filled her days with work. She helped her father with negotiations, wrote reports, attended meetings with alien ambassadors. She was good at her job, and she made sure everyone knew it. Daniel became a ghost. He woke before her and left the quarters before she opened her eyes. He worked in the maintenance bay, fixing engines and cleaning filters. He ate alone in the corner of the mess hall. He returned to their quarters after she was already asleep. They barely spoke 10 words a day. Grace told herself this was what she wanted. She had her independence. She had her career. The marriage was just a piece of paper, nothing more. But the crew of the Everlight noticed. They always noticed. "I heard she cries every night," one officer whispered in the hallway. "Poor thing, married to that empty man," another said. "He barely speaks. He barely exists. What kind of husband is that?" A Grace heard the whispers. Some people pied her, others mocked Daniel behind his back. They called him the shadow and the furniture. They laughed about how the Ambassador's brilliant daughter had married the most boring man in the galaxy. Grace never defended him. She told herself he did not deserve her defense. But sometimes late at night, she felt a small twist of guilt in her chest. It was during the 4th month that Grace started to notice strange things. One morning she saw Daniel in the cargo bay. He was alone lifting a heavy metal container onto a shelf. The container was marked 500 kg in red letters. That weight required 3 strong men or a machine to lift. Daniel lifted it with one hand, then he heard footsteps coming. Instantly, he put the container down and pretended to struggle with it. 2 other workers arrived and helped him lift it together. Daniel smiled awkwardly and thanked them. Grace watched from the doorway. Her heart was beating fast. Another day. She passed by the medical bay and heard the doctor talking to his assistant. That Park fellow came in for his physical today, the doctor said. Strangest thing, his blood pressure, his heart rate, his cell regeneration. Everything is perfect, too perfect. I have never seen readings like that in a human before. Maybe the machine was broken, the assistant suggested. I checked 3 times. The machine is fine. The man is just unusual. Grace walked away before they could see her. She began watching Daniel more carefully. She noticed that he never got tired. He never got sick. He never seemed to feel cold or heat. When she saw him touch a hot pipe by accident, any normal person would have screamed. Daniel simply pulled his hand away and kept working. His skin was not even red. One night, Grace could not sleep. She left her bedroom and found Daniel sitting by the window staring at the stars. His eyes were open, but he was not blinking. He sat perfectly still like a statue. For 10 minutes, he did not move at all. Then he sensed her watching. He turned and looked at her with those quiet brown eyes. Can't sleep? He asked. Grace crossed her arms. What are you? Daniel and LT Unk and GT's face did not change. I am your husband. That is not what I asked. Daniel stood up slowly. In the starlight, he looked different, older, sadder, like a man carrying a weight too heavy for human shoulders. I am nothing you need to worry about, Mrs. Park, he said softly. Please go back to bed. Grace wanted to push harder. She wanted to grab him and shake the truth out of him, but something in his eyes stopped her. There was pain there, deep, ancient pain that she could not understand. She went back to her room without another word. The next morning, everything changed. Grace was in a meeting with her father when the alarm started. Red lights flashed, sirens screamed. Ship shook like a toy in an angry child's hand. All crew to emergency station. The captain's voice boomed. This is not a drill. Repeat. This is not a drill. Grace ran to the bridge with her father. What she saw through the main window made her blood turn to ice. Ships, dozens of them, they were black and covered with spikes like metal. Demons floating in space. The symbol on their hulls was a red claw. Dripping blood, the Dravari Empire. They broke the ceasefire. Captain Thomas Lee said. His face was pale. 200 warships are heading for Alliance space. This strike force found us first. Grace counted 15 enemy ships surrounding the Everite. Their vessel was a diplomatic ship, not a warship. They had almost no weapons. They had no chance. Can we jump to safety? Ambassador Kim asked. The jump drive is damaged, the captain replied. We are stuck here. Communication screen flickered. A face appeared. It was reptilian, covered in green scales with yellow eyes full of cruel intelligence. Prince Korath, son of the Dravari High Commander human vessel, Korath hissed. You will surrender now, give us the ambassador and LT Unk and GT's daughter, and we will. Let the rest of you live, refuse, and we will tear your ship apart piece by piece. Grace's legs went weak. They wanted her. They wanted to use her as a hostage, a toy, a symbol of human weakness. Captain Lee stepped forward. We will never surrender. We would rather die. Kor laughed. Then you will die. You have 10 minutes. The screen went black. Panic spread through the bridge. Officers shouted. Alarms kept screaming. Grace's father grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the emergency shelter. Then a calm voice cut through the chaos. Open the airlock. Everyone turned. Daniel stood in the doorway of the bridge. He was wearing an old combat suit, but he carried no weapons. His face was peaceful, almost serene. Captain Lee stared at him. Park, what are you doing here? Open the airlock. Daniel repeated, I am going outside. Grace pushed through the crowd. Are you insane? There is no air out there. You will die in seconds. Daniel looked at her for the first time since their wedding. She saw something real in his eyes, something burning, something ancient. I made a vow to protect you. Grace, he said softly, let me keep it. Before anyone could stop him, Daniel walked to the airlock. He stepped inside. He did not put on a helmet. He did not take any oxygen. The inner door closed. The outer door opened. Daniel stepped into the cold, empty void of space. Grace screamed his name, and then the universe exploded with light. Grace pressed her hands against the window. Her heart stopped. Her breath stopped. Everything stopped. Daniel floated in the emptiness of space. No suit, no helmet, no oxygen. He should have been dead in 3 seconds. His blood should have boiled. His lungs should have exploded. But Daniel was not dead. He was glowing. Golden light poured from his body like water from a broken dam. It started soft, then grew brighter and brighter, until Grace had to shield her eyes. Light was warm. She could feel it through the ship's walls, through the cold metal, through her very bones. Daniel's body began to change. He grew taller. His simple maintenance suit burned away like paper in a fire. His skin turned golden like living sunlight. His brown eyes became 2 blazing stars, white and terrible and beautiful. Wings unfolded from his back. They were not made of feathers. They were made of fire, pure cosmic fire that stretched out across the darkness of space. One wing, then another. They spread wider and wider until they were longer than the ever light itself. His voice echoed across every frequency. Every ship heard it. Every mind felt it. It was not a human voice anymore. It was the voice of something ancient, something divine. I am the last guardian of Earth. I have slept for 10,000 years, and you have threatened what I swore to protect. On the Dravari flagship, Prince Korath stumbled backward from his command chair. His yellow eyes were wide with fear. His scales had turned pale. What is that? He screamed. What is that? His officers had no answer. They had never seen anything like this. No species in the known galaxy had ever recorded such a being. It was impossible. It was a myth. It was a god. Daniel turned toward the Dravari fleet. His burning eyes found Korath's flagship. You wanted war, Daniel said. His voice was calm now, but it carried across the void like thunder. I will Give you war, he moved. No, he did not move, he simply appeared. One moment he was near the Everlight, the next moment he was in front of the first Davari cruiser. His hand touched the ship's hull. The entire cruiser turned to dust. Not an explosion, not fire, just dust. 1,000,000 tons of metal and weapons, and soldiers reduced to gray powder floating. In space, the Davari fleet opened fire. Every ship launched missiles, every cannon blazed, thousands of weapons aimed at one target. Daniel did not dodge, he did not hide, he simply stood there as the weapons hit him. Nothing happened. The missiles exploded against his golden skin and left no mark. The laser beams bent around him like water around a stone. The plasma rounds disappeared into his light like raindrops into the sun. He was untouchable. He was invincible. He was a god of war. Daniel raised his hand. Beam of pure white light shot from his palm. It cut through 3 ships at once. They split apart and died silently in the cold vacuum. On the Everlight, Grace watched with tears streaming down her face. She did not know if she was crying from fear or wonder or something else entirely. The plain, quiet man she had married was gone. In his place was a being of impossible power, beautiful and terrible beyond words. Captain, one of the officers whispered, "Are you seeing this?" Thomas Lee nodded slowly. His hands were shaking. "I am seeing it. I do not believe it, but I am seeing it." Daniel tore through the Davari fleet like a storm through paper boats. He moved faster than the eye could follow. His wings cut through holes like knives through butter. His eyes burned holes through shields that were supposed to be unbreakable. Prince Corinth ordered a retreat. His ships tried to run, but there was no running from Daniel. He appeared in front of them, behind them, beside them, everywhere at once, nowhere to hide. "Please," Cor begged over the communication channel. His voice was no longer proud. It was the voice of a frightened child. "Please, we surrender. We will leave. We will never come back. Please." Daniel paused. He floated in front of Cor's flagship, his wings spread wide, his eyes blazing. "You came to take an innocent woman as your prize," Daniel said. "You came to kill and destroy and conquer. Did you show mercy to the worlds you burned? Did you hear their pleas?" Corinth had no answer. "Go back to your father," Daniel said. "Tell him what you saw today. Tell him that Earth is protected. Tell him that if he comes for my people, I will come for him. And I will not be merciful." He reached out and touched Cor's ship. He did not destroy it. Instead, he left a mark on the hull, a burning golden handprint that would never fade. "This is my warning. There will not be another." Cor's ship jumped away. The few surviving Davari vessels followed. Daniel floated alone in the field of dust and debris. 15 warships had become nothing. The battle had lasted 7 minutes. He turned and flew back toward the Everlight. As he approached, his divine form began to fade. The light dimmed, the wings folded and disappeared. His golden skin became pale flesh again. His burning eyes became tired brown eyes. By the time he reached the airlock, he was just a man. A broken, exhausted man who could barely stand. The inner door opened. Daniel stumbled inside and collapsed. Grace caught him before he hit the floor. His nose was bleeding. His eyes were bleeding. His whole body was shaking like he had run 1,000 miles. He looked up at her with those sad, quiet eyes. "I am sorry," he whispered. I did not want you to see. Grace held him tighter. She did not know what to say. She did not know what to feel. The man in her arms was a stranger and a god. And her husband all at once. Why, she finally asked, why did you hide this? Daniel and LT Unk and GT's eyes began to close. He was fading, losing consciousness, because I wanted you to see me as a man, he said. Just a man. His head fell against her shoulder. He was unconscious. Grace looked up at the crew. They were all staring at her, at Daniel at the window, where dust still floated. All that remained of 15 warships. Captain Thomas Lee walked forward slowly. His face was pale, but there was something else in his eyes. Recognition. I knew, he said quietly. I knew there was something different about him, but I never imagined this. Grace looked down at Daniel's sleeping face. He looked so peaceful now, so ordinary, so human. What is he? She asked. Thomas shook his head. That is a long story, Mrs. Park, and I think you deserve to hear all of it. He helped Grace carry Daniel to the medical bay. The ship was quiet. Everyone was in shock. They had just witnessed something impossible, something that changed everything they thought they knew about humanity. Grace sat beside Daniel's bed and held his hand. She thought about all the times she had been cold to him, all the times she had treated him like he was nothing. He was not nothing, he was everything. And he had hidden himself away just so she would not be afraid of him. For the first time since her wedding, Grace felt something warm in her chest. It was not love, not yet, but it was the beginning of something. She squeezed his hand and waited for him to wake up. Daniel did not wake up for 3 days. Grace never left his side. She ate in the medical bay. She slept in a chair next to his bed. The doctors said they could not explain what was wrong with him. His body was healing, but slowly, like a battery recharging after being completely drained. On the second night, Captain Thomas Lee came to see her. He was an older man, maybe 50, with gray hair and kind eyes. He had been Daniel's commanding officer for 5 years. He sat down across from Grace and looked at Daniel's sleeping face. You want to know the truth, he said. It was not a question. Grace nodded. I need to know. Thomas took a deep breath. What I'm about to tell you is known by only 3 people in the universe. Now it will be 4. He leaned back in his chair and began to speak. 10,000 years ago, humanity was young. We had just learned to farm and build simple cities. We knew nothing of the stars. To us, the sky was a mystery full of gods and spirits. Grace listened in silence. One night something fell from the sky. It was not a meteor. It was a being of pure energy, a cosmic entity older than our sun. It had been wounded in a war between powers we cannot imagine. It was dying. Thomas paused. His eyes were distant, like he was seeing something far away. It fell near a small village. A young woman found it. Her name has been lost to time, but she was kind and brave. Instead of running, she cared for the wounded being. She gave it food and water. She sang to it when it was in pain. She treated it not as a monster, but as a friend. Grace looked at Daniel. His face was peaceful in sleep. The being was touched by her kindness. Thomas continued. It had lived for millions of years. It had seen countless civilizations rise and fall, but it had never known simple human kindness before. When it finally healed, it made a choice. It merged a part of itself with the woman's bloodline. It gave her family a gift. What gift? Grace asked. Power, the power of creation itself. The power to protect Earth from any threat, from any enemy, from any darkness. Her children and her children's children carried this power. They were called the Guardians. Thomas looked at Daniel. For thousands of years, the Guardians protected humanity. In secret, they fought wars we never knew about. They stopped invasions we never saw. They kept us safe while we grew and learned and reached for the stars. Grace's throat was tight. What happened to them? Thomas's face became sad. Other species discovered them. Species who feared what the Guardians could do. They could not allow such power to exist in human hands, so they hunted the Guardians one by one, generation after generation. They killed them all except one. Grace whispered. Thomas nodded. All except Daniel. He is the last. He has been hiding for 500 years, hiding and waiting and hoping that no one would find him. Grace felt tears building in her eyes. 500 years alone. 500 years of running and hiding. 500 years of watching his family die while he survived. Why did he agree to marry me? She asked. Why would he come out of hiding? Thomas smiled softly. When your father proposed the political marriage, he sent out a request for volunteers. No one wanted the job. They all knew you were brilliant and proud and difficult. They thought you would make their lives miserable. Grace felt a small sting of shame. Daniel volunteered immediately. I asked him why. He said he had watched you from a distance. He had seen your speeches, your writings, your work. He said you reminded him of someone who he never told me, but I think it was the woman from the story, the kind one who saved a dying god. He saw something in you that made him want to live again. Grace wiped her eyes. I have been terrible to him. I treated him like dirt. I never gave him a chance. Thomas shook his head. You did not know. How could you know? He hid everything from you. He wanted you to see him as a normal man. He wanted you to love him for who he is, not for what he can do. Grace looked at Daniel's face. She remembered his quiet patience, his gentle silence, his willingness to sleep on the floor without complaint. All this time a god had been living in her shadow, asking for nothing, expecting nothing. I do not deserve him, she said. That is not for you to decide, Thomas replied. That is for him. The next morning Daniel opened his eyes. Grace was asleep in her chair. She woke up when she heard him move. Their eyes met for a long moment. Neither of them spoke. How long? Daniel asked. His voice was weak. 3 days. You scared me. Daniel tried to sit up. Grace helped him, putting pillows behind his back. Her hands were gentle. Now careful. Thomas told me everything, she said. Daniel closed his eyes. I see. Why did you not tell me yourself? Daniel was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was heavy with old sorrow. I have lived for 500 years. I have seen everyone I loved die. My mother, my brothers, my sisters, my friends. I watched them grow old while I stayed the same. I watched them get hunted and killed while I hid like a coward. A tear rolled down his cheek. When I married you, I wanted something normal, something real. I wanted a wife who saw me as a man, not as a weapon. I thought if I could just be ordinary, maybe I could finally find peace. Grace took his hand. His skin was warm. You are not ordinary, Daniel. You never were, but that does not mean you are a Monster. Daniel opened his eyes. You are not afraid of me. Grace shook her head. I'm afraid of losing you. Something changed in Daniel's face. The sadness was still there, but now there was something else, hope, small and fragile, but real. The Dravari will not stop, he said. Prince Koreth will tell his father what he saw. High Commander Vex will bring his entire fleet, 2,000 ships, maybe more. Then we will fight them. Daniel shook his head. You cannot fight them. They will burn Earth. They will kill billions. Not even I can stop 2,000 ships alone. Grace squeezed his hand tighter. You will not be alone. Daniel looked at her with confusion. Grace stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and eternal. My whole life I wanted to prove that humanity was worth something, that we were not just insects to be stepped on by greater powers. Now I have proof. She turned back to him. You are human, Daniel. You were born on Earth. You carry our blood, our spirit, our heart. Your power does not make you less human. It makes you the best of us. She walked back to his bed and sat on the edge. When the Dravari come, humanity will stand with you, not because you are a god, but because you are one of us. And we do not abandon our own. Daniel stared at her. For 500 years no one had ever said such words to him. For 500 years he had been alone. He reached up and touched her face. His hand was gentle, like he was afraid she would break. Grace, he said softly. She leaned into his touch. I am here, she said. I am not going anywhere. Outside the window, the stars kept burning. Somewhere in the distance, the Dravari fleet was gathering. The greatest battle in human history was coming. But in that small medical room, two broken people found something. They had both lost each other. The Galactic Alliance sent a message to Earth on a cold Tuesday morning. Grace read it in the war room with her father and the leaders of every human colony. We regret to inform you that the Alliance cannot provide military support against the Dravari Empire. The risk to Alliance resources is too great. Earth is hereby removed from Alliance protection. We wish you well in your future endeavors. Ambassador Kim put down the message. His face was gray. They have abandoned us, he said. We are alone. Grace felt anger burning in her chest. For 200 years, humanity had served the Alliance. They had paid taxes. They had followed rules. They had bent their knees to species who treated them like pets. And now when they needed help, the Alliance threw them away like garbage. We were always alone, Grace said. We just did not know it. The human fleet gathered at the fortress world of New Haven. It was not much of a fleet, 300 ships, most of them old and small, civilian transports with weapons bolted onto their hulls, mining vessels converted into fighters. It was a joke compared to the Dravari Armada, but every ship was crewed by humans. Every human was willing to die. Daniel stood on the bridge of the flagship, the Burning Hope. He had recovered his strength, but Grace could see the worry in his eyes. 2,000 ships, he said quietly. Even at my full power, I cannot destroy them all. Some will get through, some will reach Earth. Grace put her hand on his arm. Then we fight beside you. We buy you time. We do whatever we can. Daniel looked at her. In the weeks since his secret was revealed, something had changed between them. They talked now. They ate together. They laughed together. At night they slept in the same bed. holding each other against the darkness. It was not the love of fairy tales, it was something deeper, something real. Two broken people who had found shelter in each other. I cannot ask humans to die for me, Daniel said. Grace smiled. You are not asking, we are choosing. The Dravari fleet arrived 3 days later. They came out of hyperspace like a wave of black metal blocking out the stars. 2,000 ships, the largest invasion force in recorded history. At the center of the fleet was a ship bigger than all the others. It was shaped like a claw, covered in red lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. The flagship of High Commander Vex. Vex himself appeared on every screen. He was enormous even for a Dravari. His scales were black as night. His eyes were red as blood. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had never known defeat. Humans, he said. His voice was deep and cold. Your pet god embarrassed my son. For that I will burn your planet. I will eat your children. I will make your species a memory. Grace stepped forward to the communication panel. Hi, Commander Vex. I am Grace Kim, voice of the human fleet. We do not want war, but we will not surrender. If you attack us, you will pay a price you cannot imagine. Vex laughed. It was an ugly sound, like rocks grinding together. You have one ship that matters, one glowing human with wings. I have weapons that can crack planets. I have soldiers bred for 10,000 years to kill. Your god will fall, and I will wear his bones as jewelry. The communication ended. Grace looked at Daniel. He was already walking toward the airlock. Daniel, wait. He stopped but did not turn around. Promise me something, Grace said. What promise? Me you will come back. Daniel finally turned. He walked to her and took her face in his hands. His eyes were burning with golden light, but his touch was gentle. I have lived for 500 years, he said. I have never had a reason to survive. Now I do. He kissed her. It was not a small kiss like their wedding day. It was deep and real and full of everything they had found together. Then he stepped into the airlock and transformed. His divine form was brighter than before. His wings stretched across kilometers of space. His eyes were twin suns. When he roared, the sound shook every ship in both fleets. The battle began. Daniel flew into the Dravari fleet like a comet. Ships exploded around him. Weapons fired from every direction. He was faster, stronger, more powerful than before. Love had given him something he had lost long ago, purpose. But there were so many enemies. For every ship he destroyed, 10 more took its place. Vex had not lied about his weapons. Black hole grenades tore holes in reality. Reality rippers bent space around Daniel, trying to trap him. Planet crackers launched beams of pure destruction. Daniel fought through it all, but he was slowing down. His light was dimming on his flagship. Vex smiled. Tire him out, he ordered. Let him burn himself empty. Then I will crush him myself. The human fleet moved. They were tiny compared to the Dravari ships. They were weak and old and outgunned. But they did not run. Grace stood at the helm of a battered cruiser. The last light around her. Thousands of humans flew their ships directly at the enemy. All ships, Grace said over the radio. This is Grace Kim. Today we fight for our home. Today we fight for our future. Today we fight for the man who would burn himself to ash to protect us. He is not alone. He was never alone. For Earth, the human fleet crashed into the Dravari formation like a fist. They Could not win. They knew they could not win, but they bought Daniel time. They distracted the enemy. They died so he could live. Ship after ship exploded. Humans screamed and fought and died. Grace's cruiser took hit after hit. Fires burned around her. Her crew fell at their stations, but she kept flying straight toward Vex's flagship. Daniel saw her. He saw the tiny human ship flying toward the monster that wanted to destroy everything. Something broke inside him. Or maybe something woke up. He remembered the story Thomas had told. The first guardian was not born from power. The first guardian was born from love, a human woman who showed kindness to a dying God. Grace was that woman, not because she was special, because she was human, because humans loved with a fire that burned brighter than any star. Daniel screamed. His divine form exploded with light. He grew larger, brighter. His wings spread across the entire battlefield. His body became sun, a star, a force of creation itself. This was his true form, the form he had hidden for 10,000 years, the full power of the Guardian unleashed at last. He spoke one word. It was not a word in any human language. It was the word that had created the universe, the word that had started time itself. The Dravari fleet stopped. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier. They froze in place like insects in amber. Then they began to unmake. Not explosion, not destruction, unmaking. The ships faded away, atom by atom, returning to the cosmic dust they had come from. Soldiers dissolved into light. Weapons turned to nothing. High Commander Vex had time for one final scream before he, too, became nothing. In 30 seconds, 2,000 ships ceased to exist. The battle was over. Daniel's divine form faded. He fell through space unconscious, drained beyond anything he had ever experienced. Grace caught him. Her damaged ship limped through the debris field and opened its cargo bay. She pulled his body inside with her own hands. He was barely breathing. His face was pale as death. Stay with me, she whispered. You promised you would come back. Months later, Earth was at peace. The Galactic Alliance sent ambassadors with apologies and gifts. They had watched the battle. They had seen what humanity could do. They were afraid now, afraid and respectful. Daniel recovered slowly. He would never be as powerful as he was. In that final moment, he had burned most of his divine energy to save Earth, but he did not care. He was finally free. Grace and Daniel stood on a balcony in Seoul. The city had been rebuilt after years of neglect. It shined in the sunlight like a jewel. Daniel looked at his wife. She was wearing a simple dress, nothing fancy. Her hair moved in the wind. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. Do you regret it? He asked. Marrying me out of obligation. Grace turned to him and smiled. It was a real smile, full of warmth and love. I married a stranger because I had no choice, but I fell in love with a man who would burn the stars to keep me safe. She took his hand and squeezed it. No, I do not regret a single moment. Daniel pulled her close. For the first time in 500 years, he felt like he belonged somewhere with someone. I love you, Grace. I love you too. Daniel, above them the stars shined peacefully. Somewhere out there, other species whispered about Earth, about the world, protected by a God, about the humans who had fought beside him. They would never be underestimated again. And in the city below, two people who had started as Strangers walked back inside, hand in hand, ready to begin their real life. Together, the story of the guardian and his bride was just